we'll establish a queue, we'll write that down, and then we'll call people one at a time. And after people have made some presentation about what they think the 2021-22 should be like, what they would like it to be like, then after everybody's made their presentation, then we'll have discussion. And again, we'll establish a queue for discussion of what the first group said. And basically, I think we all have heard this expression, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. I think I have to attribute that to Donald Rumsfeld, who is not my favorite person, but it's the truth. And we're in the midst of several crises at this time. A divided nation, a pandemic, environmental calamities, systemic racism boiling over, and a collapsing economy. So I've asked you members to do a little homework and try to envision what you would like to see. And I think the assumption is you would like to see when Biden wins, and hopefully we have a majority, let alone maybe 60 in the Senate. It could happen. What you would like to see in changes to the world. And we're never going to get back to normal. I think we all realize that there is no new normal, and we're going to have to try to mold that future. And the future starts with a vision. And it's like in high school intermediate algebra. Remember the J-axis, there was the imaginary axis, where that was the square root of -1. Well, an idea starts out as all imaginary and takes on real components as it moves into the future and actually becomes something. And that is certainly true with politics. So what I'm asking is for your seeds of ideas going into 2021, 2022, what would you like to see? What do you think that society needs to see? And what I'd like to do right now is if you can go into the participants box and raise your hand if you would like to speak on this. Okay.
Next page.
So you would, just a second, we're having a fight over the page.
Okay.
Okay, so
anybody?
raise hands. So I see Joy is up there, and Mary Perner,
And Van.
and Van, and Ron M. And
Al has also got his hand up, but he's not designating the raised hand on the participants list.
who is that? Oh, Ron Lorenz.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I have a feeling the iPad works a little bit differently than, you have an iPad if I remember correctly.
That's correct, yes.
So I've got in this order, Joy, Mary, Van, Ron M, and Ron L.
And other people can participate later.
Yeah, well, later on, people will participate in the discussion. Joy Montgomery, I haven't seen you for a while. Come on the screen. Unmute yourself.
I am unmuted now, but I don't have a camera. So can I share my screen?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
So my vision is regenerative agriculture. And it's a matter of safe air, safe food, and safe water for everybody. I've spent several years now working on this and have a plan in place. I have the people and I have the partners in place. And now when I'm looking at it, I can't see part of my screen because people are on it. But the idea is basically to actually grind up the burned trees in the forest, deliver it to farms in the valley, and help to transition to regenerative agriculture. One of the big concerns of farmers is that there's going to be some big cost to regenerating, and there isn't necessarily a big cost because they reduce the cost of pesticides, herbicides, and they don't need to buy piles of gypsum to try and repair the soil that they've damaged. So they reduce a lot of cost and get a lot of benefit from a pretty affordable solution. And one of the big benefits for the forest, because you see the arrow goes back up to the forest, is that covered crops in the agricultural area increases rain in the mountains. So the whole thing is a loop. If you increase rain in the mountains, you increase the water going to the valley, you decrease the fires, and you're creating jobs all over with the survivors up in the mountains.
Is that
So
it?
I wondered if I needed to do the Woody Woodpecker thing. That's all, folks.
No, that was Bugs. That's all, folks. Okay. Thank you very much, Joy. I know I'll have some questions later on. Mary Perner, what's up with you?
Well, I've been thinking about this a little bit lately. I don't have a nice chart the way Joy did, but I have a few things in my thoughts, and that is we're going to have to repair a whole lot. It's going to take at least a year and a half of this upcoming, hopefully new administration, because so many different environmental laws have been reduced or eliminated. There are all kinds of positions where people need to be replaced. The wrong people are in jobs of importance. Right now, we're going to have to deal with SCOTUS, the Supreme Court. Congress is already trying to get a measure going right now as we speak to eliminate court packing. Meantime, we just hit a magic number, I think it was yesterday or the day before, 200 justices have been appointed by the Trump administration to different courts around the country. And these people who are not particularly qualified, or if they have qualifications, they're very biased. Well, that's not a good word, but they are leaning in one direction, one particular party direction. We have to resume all the treaties that we dropped out of, re-up with the World Health Organization, which is going to be, I mean, it's appalling that we dropped out of that. The Iran agreement, the Paris Agreement. Am I forgetting anything? There are a number of agreements and treaties that we announced that we were not going to be part of. The administration is going to have its hands full making repairs. And I don't know how that translates out to the local level. Maybe other people can add to that. Locally, we have a couple of candidates around Alameda County who are Democrats in name only, and we have to take a look at that too. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. By the way, I've added myself to the end of the list. Van, you're up next.
Thanks. I finished a book. It was released this week called The Upswing by Robert Putnam. And in that book, and I highly recommend it to anyone, it talks about the conscious trends that people have been exhibiting, since the late 1800s, and how they reacted to the inequities that existed during that time period, the late 1800s, and how people came together and had a much more we consciousness than what we have today. The consciousness today is prevalently, just who's in it, what I'm in it for myself. There's not a whole lot of connection that we share with each other. And we don't have a moral perspective on how we want our world to be. And that process and that conversation needs to start as soon as possible, because politics and policies, come, late to that game. You have to change the consciousness of the people in this country. They have to start thinking that they're not just in it for themselves, but we all gain from taking care of each other in some way, shape, or form. That we think about the kinds of things that have occurred in Europe, where their economies are more resilient and healthier. And the bottom line is that we all recognize that we're in a moral demise and a period of decay. And we have to start that conversation with each other. And we have to start thinking, not just about our better angels, but, how we can really revive the consciousness of the entire population and start, cultivating connections and seeing how we can support each other. And then politics will shift. We can't expect policies and politics to shift to our way of thinking until we can get people on board to a different kind of vision and a different type of attitude that, about each other. And the current level of polarization has to be cured. It has to be healed. It cannot simply fester any longer. And I think that's explained very well in this book, Upswing, but it's also illustrated in a number of books like, 10 Lessons from the Pandemic by Fareed Zakaria, and a number of other people that have looked at this issue in far more detail than I'm reciting here. And I think it's important that we start paying attention and how we can foster a more communal kind of effort in this country.
Is that it, Van?
Oh yeah, that's all, folks.
Thank you.
That's all, folks. Okay, good deal. Ron M. Minucci. Should I say that
Yeah.
right?
I'm here. I guess I'm audible.
I don't see you.
She's right there,
Oh,
right
I'm
next to
here.
us.
oh,
Yeah.
you were too close.
Good.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, so I was thinking about the fact, after hearing Katie Porter's interview, that the Speaker of the House used to be more powerful than the president. And that also led to the thought that we were actually lucky with Trump, because as evil as the man is, he's also incompetent and kind of stupid. And, the thing that scares me is the thought that we get a Trump person who is young, competent, evil, and smart, and the danger we'd be in. And I think that we've got to rebalance Washington. We have to turn off a lot of these executive powers that have accumulated over the last 100 years during various wars, because in some sense, Trump is a warning of just how bad it could be if we hadn't been lucky to get that particular person. So I think that we've been given our 4 years of warning. I hope that we get Biden in, and I think we've really got to start trimming the wings of the presidency, because it's just way too much power centered in one man. We've seen it over and over again in the last 4 years, what he can do. So that'd be the thing I really care a lot about, is cutting back on the powers, the unlimited powers that they've found that they have. That's it.
Ron Lorenz, you're up next.
Okay, thanks for this opportunity for me to talk about some ideal conditions that I'd like to see occur in the next 4 years during the Biden administration's first term. I don't think that I would like to see major changes in terms of the structure of the government. You know, I think we probably should continue to have the president and the Congress and the Supreme Court pretty much in roughly the same power levels that we have now. However, I do want to see some changes made in terms of 4 important areas. I want to break those down just briefly. I'll tell you those areas and go into a little detail after that. First, healthcare. Second, the Supreme Court. Third, economics and the tax structure. And fourth, employment. In terms of the healthcare, I'd like to see a major investment in both the research and the development of a vaccine or multiple vaccines for the COVID, and also an education program that if we can somehow convince some of the countries that are actually causing these multiple viruses such as China and Argentina and Brazil, that would be wonderful if we could somehow convince them to educate their populace not to be spreading the bat blood and the bat viruses around. So a major investment in terms of dealing with the COVID on the research and the treatment also. So lots of money into testing, lots of money into treatment when we do have any viable, either a vaccine or something that retards the spread of it. Secondarily, in terms of medical, I'd like to see the implementation and expansion of, in essence, a single payer medical insurance program. So the simplest way and the quickest way is to expand Medicare. It's not perfect. Let's go ahead and do some of the reforms that the Obama administration wanted to bring in, but we couldn't because of the fact we didn't control the Senate. So we had to cut it way back in terms of the liberalization of it. So I'd also like to see an option, in addition to the fact that anyone can join the single payer Medicare expanded program. I'd like to see an option for the super rich or those who are afraid of universal care to be able to have one private company that they can have as an option. Okay, let's move on to the Supreme Court. Looks like we're going to have a supermajority for the heavily conservative 6-3. Let's expand the Supreme Court. This is a doable thing under our Constitution. Let's add 2, maybe 4 members to the Supreme Court. Let's put the liberals in there. Why not a liberal majority? Why not a 7-6 majority? All right, something to think about in terms of the Supreme Court. In terms of economics, some of the reforms that Bernie is discussing are essential. One of them is that we have to stop the majority of the Forbes 100 top corporations from paying no taxes. The great majority of the top 50 are either paying no taxes or are getting billions of dollars in subsidies. So we need to just quickly change that tax structure. Maybe it's something as simple as a 15% flat corporate tax. Can you imagine what that would mean if Ford, AT&T, Amazon, all of those people are paying 15% rather than getting money in return? The average for Chevron is something in the neighborhood of $1 billion a year in subsidies over the last 10 years. This is absolutely absurd. We need to cut out subsidies for fossil fuels, tobacco, pharma, and any other major corporation that's raiding our treasury. Not just not putting any money in, but they raid our treasury. Okay, that's my economic ideal goals. And then finally, in terms of employment, nothing new. Let's go ahead and invest a lot of money into sustainable energy and also rail, mass transit, and repairing some of the roads and bridges that we have throughout our highway system. It hasn't really had much of an upgrade since the 1950s when Eisenhower implemented the interstate highway system. So let's go ahead and have the federal government start by creating maybe 500,000 to 1 million jobs in sustainable energy and improving our transportation structures. And so that's my four-prong approach to making the next couple of years a lot brighter and a lot better for the great majority of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. My turn. I'm the one that suggested this whole thing, so obviously I had some ideas as to where this thing might go. And that the crisis that we're facing includes a divided country. And win, lose, or draw in this election, we're still going to have a divided country at the end of November or at the beginning of January. And what we can do about this divided country is start talking to the people that we're close to, that we have relationships with, that trust us already. And instead of avoiding those conversations, we have to step into them, but not in a way that's combative, but rather in a way that there's an agreement between you and your crazy uncle that you're not going to be combative and hostile to each other, but you're going to try to find common ground because you've been pissed at each other just too long. And guilty also. So we have to do that. But on a societal basis, we're going to be living with COVID for a long time. And the reason is that even the vaccines they're talking about, the testing that they're talking about, is only so accurate. So they're talking about a vaccine that's perhaps 50% effective. That is, you get the vaccine and you go out into the public and you're exposed, you got a 50-50 shot at catching it, which is unfortunate. So we're going to still continue to wear masks and things like that. But because of that, and Biden has talked about this, we need extensive testing, things like a $2 test that takes maybe 15 minutes to get your result. And you can go down to CVS or any of the other drugstores and get it. And once somebody is tested positive, they're going to have to be isolated. And I know that California has taken over a few motels and like that so that people, particularly the homeless, could be isolated. But once we ramp up the testing, we're going to need more of these isolation facilities. And every time somebody tests positive, we got to put them in an isolation facility, and some group of people has to service them. Now, there are some industries that have totally gone away or mostly gone away. Things like the hospitality industry. I know my daughters are in that industry, and there aren't a lot of bar mitzvahs and weddings that are going on live anymore. But there's lots more than that in the hospitality industry, the vacation industry. San Francisco's biggest industry is the hospitality industry with all the hotels and tourism, because that's part of it. And that's somewhat going away also. So all of those people who are employed in those businesses will have to be moving into other parts of the other parts of labor. And they'll be working in some of these hotels, these isolation hotels. Ron talked a little bit about healthcare, but the light bulb is going to go on at some point when we're going to say, as long as there's these people living under the freeway who don't have healthcare, who may have COVID, just going near them could infect us. We can't afford to have them doing that anymore. And we're going to have to give them health care, give them a place to live, and isolate them if in fact they do have COVID. So the survival of the people in the United States, and in fact the people on this planet, is making sure everybody has health care so that if somebody does get sick, we can move them in isolation and they don't infect the rest of the population. The alternative is this crazy herd immunity thing, which is, as I just said, completely crazy. There's going to be changes in the way we feel about each other. We had this trauma called World War II. I was born just after World War II, as most of you were, or you were babies at that time. And everybody's perspective changed because the whole country pulled together. Right now, we haven't got a leader that has the whole country pulling together. In fact, is just the opposite. But hopefully, we're electing a leader that will have the whole country pulling in the same direction. Somebody once told me the definition of management is to get everybody marching in the same direction. I think Biden is capable of doing that. And in marching in the same direction, we'll be achieving the same thing. And maybe we'll bring back that feeling of community. Certainly that feeling of community existed at the end of World War II when we said, we all got through this together. We all worked hand in hand to get through this. And we're going to have to do that. And hopefully that will drive America together. So that's what I have to say for right now. What I'd
Anybody-
like to do is,
Ask anybody else if they want to.
well, that's exactly what I
I
was.
had my hand up.
Okay,
Alice.
Okay, Jeff, why don't you take that first one? But raise your hand if you would like to be on the list to comment. So I got Jeff, Jackie, and Ron's iPad. Okay, Ron Lorenz. Okay, is there anybody else in the comment?
John, did
Okay.
you had your hand up at one point?
Who?
Sean, I think, had his hand up. Are
oh,
you?
Sean, okay.
Sean, do you have your hand up or no?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay,
You don't want to tell us what the future's going to be?
okay.
Well, my future is so much more localized. You guys are talking about really big topics, so I don't
Well,
want to. I don't want to get off.
You
off
get to
topic.
talk about whatever you want, but
Okay.
let's let Jeff go now. It's
Okay.
Jeff's turn.
Put Sean down.
Okay, thank you. I was particularly struck by comments that Van made and Ellis made about coming together in reasoned dialogue with the other side to try to bring the country together. And I think that's a noble goal and that it ought to be tried. But quite frankly, I'm really not so hopeful about the success of that. And the reason is, I'm going to tell you a bit about myself and a letter that I had published in my other hometown newspaper last week that it'll become clear to you what this is about. Some of you may know that I spend about half my time here in California. The other half of my time, I have another home in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And this past year, 2020, I've been sort of trapped here in California because of the pandemic. I haven't been back to Gettysburg since early January, but nonetheless, I focused my political efforts on Pennsylvania because, as we all know, Pennsylvania is a key state in the upcoming election. Trump took that state and the election by a mere 40,000 votes. And I've been working along with many other people in South Central Pennsylvania to make the outcome different this year. So that's just sort of introduction to what I'm going to read you now. It's very short. It's a letter that I had published last Thursday in the Gettysburg Times. And here it goes. The Republican and Democratic parties have starkly different positions and approaches to all the major issues facing voters in the upcoming election: healthcare, education, the economy, national security, coronavirus relief aid, criminal justice reform, police reform, immigration. But forget all that. There is one issue that dominates all others, because President Trump has made it so and defines what is really at stake in this election. President Trump has cast himself from the very start as the protector, defender, and promoter of white privilege and white supremacy. He has said so himself by repeatedly refusing to condemn or disavow violent white supremacists, as he did in the first presidential debate. It is time for Republicans to quit denying the obvious. I get it. My Republican friends feel offended by the implication that they themselves are racists because they support President Trump. They protest that their support is because they like what he has done on the economy and or one or more of the other issues. I take them at their word and would not presume to label all Trump supporters as racists. But they are enablers and supporters of a racist president who, if he is reelected, will certainly sow further chaos and division. In 1863, the great battle that was fought here in Gettysburg and surrounding Adams County marked the beginning of the end of human chattel slavery in this country. Let Adams County lead the way again in 2020 to put an end to the Trump Republican Party, so that, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, the moral arc of the universe can continue to bend toward justice. Now that's the extent of the letter. Just to expand on that a bit, I've loved living in Gettysburg these past 12 years or so, because it's really a great town. It's a center of enlightened thinking. It was, before the Civil War, one center of the abolitionist movement in the country, and the first stop on the Underground Railroad. But it's also what I call a negative attractor for the white supremacist KKK and assorted other neo-Nazi white supremacist groups to come up there frequently, as they have this past year, stirred up by Trump's rhetoric concerning protecting the Confederate monuments. You might know that Gettysburg has the largest number of Confederate monuments outside the South of anywhere in the country. So it's an attractor for the KKK to come up there, as they have done every weekend this past year, with their AK-47s terrorizing the town. So that's what I see, and that's what concerns me in this election, is not just that Trump is himself a inciter of violence and white supremacy, but just looking at the huge number of people who support him specifically for that reason. And the only thing that really gives me hope is when I see these Black Lives Matter protests, that there's so many whites have joined them. And I'm really thinking that this may be the first time in the history of the Republic ever that there may be a majority of the population that is against white supremacy. We'll see how this election turns out. It's going to be very telling, but that's what I would like to see for the future, is that a majority of people, black and white, come out of the closet and put the country on a path to moral and racial justice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good
Is
on
that
you.
it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Jackie is next up.
I agree with everything that's been said so far tonight, especially the environmental and healthcare. Being a big Bernie supporter, healthcare, whether it's protecting the Affordable Care Act or expanding Medicare for all. The other thing that wasn't mentioned, and this is kind of a tough issue, but the media, Fox News, right-wing media, propaganda, is so easily hidden underneath the guise of being free speech. I would like to see more legislation on news agencies that protest to be news, hiding under propaganda and spreading false conspiracy theories like what's being done on Fox News. I'd like to go after the cable providers and protest them and maybe try to get some of these networks dropped. We can't hide them off air, we can't hide them from every place, but I'd like to see more pressure on the people that are advertising on these networks, etc. More needs to be done. We should not have this propaganda, yellow journalism out there spreading fake news. And I don't know if you guys can hear it. There's some foxes in my neighborhood screaming right now. I don't know if you can hear them. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. You were talking about Fox News, then foxes?
Yeah, there's actually foxes in my neighborhood screaming right now.
Foxes.
I haven't heard. That's in
Hopefully
Livermore.
none of them are named Rupert Murdoch. Speaking of the evil folks right up there with Beelzebub and Putin,
And
we have
Roger
our
Ailes.
friend, the head fox of them all, Rupert Murdoch.
There's parts of this country that don't get PBS.
That's a shame.
Even the gold country.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, Ron, you're up.
Okay, well, I wanted to indicate in general that I feel that it's very important, as Ellis said, for us to come as a country together and see what we have in common. And the way to change people's minds, according to our seminar that we had about a year ago, we brought in a wonderful psychological expert, and they explained the same thing that Ellis and I have been saying, is that the way to get people to change their mind is to show that an alternative point of view actually is very similar and promotes the goals that they have in mind, which are underlying some of the opinions that they make. So we don't want to talk directly about our differences. We want to establish a relationship of trust first, that you can then show that we have some common understanding or some common goal amongst us. So that's sort of the way to change people's minds. And this is what psychological and sociological research has shown us over the last 100 years, when that's been all financed by federal governments throughout the sophisticated world. In order to change these minds, let's take a look at what actually happens first, though. Typically, it's not the discussions down at the 1-on-1 level or the 1-on-10 level or the 50-on-50 level. What it is it's changing the laws. And then people's behavior is forced to change. And then according to the psychological principles of cognitive dissonance, you change your opinion after you change your behavior. So my approach, the more I look into politics and psychology and sociology, I think actually what we should be doing is changing the Supreme Court, changing the laws in Congress, changing the laws in Sacramento to make us more equal economically, racially, etc. I think that the changes made in the 60s were to a great extent, the gains in racial equality, gender equality, economic equality, those that were made in the 60s were to a great extent the result of Johnson's war on poverty and the new Great Society. So I'm in favor again of doing it as quickly as possible, but which is not to start from the bottom, but to start from the top. In essence, sort of show people how to change their behavior, how to be more equal, how to be less racist, etc., by putting the laws in. It's also the quickest thing that we can do. And if we have a majority of the Democrats or the liberals or the progressives, that's not so hard to do. So for the most rapid change, let's do it from the top down. Okay, if we can, if we have an allocation, everybody should talk and work with their neighbors and work with the other political groups, etc. The biggest change, in my opinion, is going to come from the top down. The second thing that we need to make big changes and change society and get everybody more equal and more liberal and more trusting is that we need to allow the middle class to expand. This is what we need to do in order to get the middle class to have power, because the history of Western civilization shows that the greatest growth starts about 1450 with the Renaissance in Italy and in East and Western Europe. This is when the middle class started to grow and people were allowed to have businesses, and the emperors lost their power and the princes no longer could force you to work and to pay percentages of your income and your farm products into them. And then you could become an independent contractor. So how do we do that? First, we change the tax structure. Then we change some of the laws that are in favor of the corporations right now that allow them to dominate, including the media laws. Jackie's point was very important. The reason that the right-wing media is so strong now is that the Federal Communications Commission abdicated to the right wing by allowing the major corporations to buy up all of the smaller newspapers and independent television stations. So let's bust the big corporate structure medias. Let's decimate Fox. Let's cut down CBS, NBC,
Viacom.
those. And that, I think, is my two major points of view. Let's expand the middle class with a tax structure, give them more power, take the money away from the top, and let us all grow. But I think it needs to start from the top and come down if we want quick change.
None of that's going to happen without a fight, Ron. So how does that square with Ellison Van's appeal to reasoned discourse with the other side?
See, my feeling is that the reasoned discourse with the other side takes a long time and will only give us minor changes. What you do is you have the Senate and the House and the Supreme Court establish equality. And then that filters down. Because I think you could talk for hundreds of years about equality, and that you could talk to your neighbor, and you can talk to the Trump supporter that lives across the street from me, and nothing gets done, or less gets done.
History
Let's-
has clearly illustrated that laws always follow on the attitudes and perspectives of the general population. You can't create laws to initiate, that kind of change, which requires a different kind of consciousness. And that's clear in history. And the other part of it is that activities like truth and reconciliation, discussions along those lines, asking the youth, okay, you guys are the most insecure portion of our society. What do you want? What do you need? How are you going to take care of each other and start, letting go as seniors, letting go of the planet which we've handed to them, and let them start to initiate a process that serves their interests. And, I think you're going to find, especially as a result of some of the protest movements that we've been seeing over this last year, that a lot of people are interested in living a full life and getting away from the insecurities we've bestowed upon them. And as a result, they're ready to work together and possibly vote and participate in government. And that's where you're going to see significant change, because nobody's asked them what they think and what they want and how they see their world unfolding. And we don't have an investment in that. We're basically sitting pretty, in our own little world, waiting for our next, retirement check to come in and sitting comfortably in our homes. But our kids aren't in that kind of situation. They're screwed. And we need to recognize that those are the people we need to take care of, and we need to give them the power in order to do that.
I'd like to say something. What I see is the possibility of what happened to Obama happening to Joe Biden, in that the first 2 years of the Obama administration, we had both houses and the White House, and we were able to pass the Affordable Care Act. Say hallelujah. But the fact is that everybody wasn't ecstatic with it, and as a consequence of that, we lost the House and we lost the Senate. Now we've taken the House back. But in this first 2 years of the Biden administration, we have to hit home runs that are home runs for all Americans, that leaves everybody smiling, everybody saying, I'm better off in 2022 than I was in 2020. That's a rather low bar, considering what 2020 has been like. But we have to make it evident to everybody that what the Democratic Party, what Biden is going to do, is going to benefit everybody. And what I'm really concerned about, and we really haven't touched on this, is probability Trump is going to lose. And I think we're all praying for that. But as soon as that announcement is made, there are some crazies with AK-47s out there. Mm-hmm. And I think that they've been waiting for that moment, and they will be doing as if it can get any crazier. I mean, look, Charlottesville, they ran the car right into, well, you all saw that. But I think it's going to escalate, and I'm not sure how that's going to be handled. And frankly, the first 2.5 months after the election, Trump is still in office. And you can't tell what he's going to do with troops and rioting and stuff like that. And I'm real concerned about that. I hope it doesn't turn into a calamity. But there's a lot of kindling, there's a lot of lighter fluid, there's a lot of matches around. And I see that there's a probability that that's going to happen right after the election. And the real question is, what is our response to that? Will beating the Republican Party into the ground do anything? I think that, what is it, the Proud Boys or whoever it is?
Proud Boys.
That, yeah, whoever, that was, they're waiting for this. And if the Republican Party gets destroyed, we're going to see a bunch of these fringe groups kind of take over the conservative mantle. And rather than getting better and more civil, it'll get less civil. And we have to address that and be very conscious of it, in that there are some people who don't want to get along. I think of Goldfinger. What do you want me to do? I want you to die, Mr. Bond.
Mhm.
And that's really what they feel about Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Tri-Valley Democratic Club, for that matter.
Okay, let's-
Yeah, we're all godless communists.
But
God.
the guys who are out there with guns are so small in number, and it's
Right.
just like the Women's March after the inauguration. They were totally outnumbered by the number of people who were thinking about how to make, the decency of this country show itself, in contrast to Donald Trump. And these people will come out on the streets if anybody shows up with guns, and they'll be so enormously outnumbered. And God help us if they come out with guns, because that will fortify the change in consciousness that is necessary to really get things moving. And so I'm not going to welcome any kind of violence or anything like that. But I believe in the soul of this country is going to express itself in the face of that kind of danger, just like in World War II.
I hope you're right, but World War II was an external force that we were able to Gookify. They were the Japs and the Krauts. They weren't humanized, but this is fellow Americans.
I
Still-
agree. I agree with Van's position on the threat of the violent few. And I think it's not helpful for us to be fearful for our own lives and for the lives of the people that are on the top. It's amazing that Trump didn't get shot. It's amazing that Obama didn't get shot. Doesn't seem to be the way that things are going these days. But I disagree very, very vehemently with Van's read on history, which says that change comes from the bottom and from the masses. What I think that we need to enter into this equation in terms of how we get structural change in a society or in the world is that we need to realize the impact and the importance of the intelligentsia, the writers. The American Revolution was driven by the intelligentsia, by the writers. The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the women's movement, these are all driven by thinkers and writers and people who are able to influence the power structure. They bring the public along with them through their arguments. And so we need to have those intelligentsia, the quality people in the media, the quality people in science, the quality people in our universities lead us. And I think that's the quickest way to change. And I think history does not show that change in attitude comes from the bottom. I believe that it comes from the top, and that I think that it will become more and more that way. Given the fact that the pandemic is here, people are not going to want to talk to each other. They're going to want to be having masks, and we don't want to get together in small little groups and agree with the next door neighbor. We're afraid he's going to give us the virus. So as society becomes more structured, more compact, more layered in terms of economic inequality, and that the power is up at the top, where the economic power is up at the top. Robert Reich says there's been a war between the economic elite and the rest of the world, and the economic elite has won. And I agree with that thoroughly. And so I think the power is up at the top, and the way that you deal with it now, even more in the past, is that you change the attitudes, you change the laws, you change the structure at the top.
I would just suggest picking up that book, Upswing. It's extremely detailed, and tells a lot about the actual progression of change and where it originates. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's one voice.
Yeah, but
The rest
it's
of
not
history,
just one voice. It's Piketty. It's
The
Fareed
rest of history,
Zakaria.
I believe, is top down.
Okay, that's the way history's always been taught. Just take a look. It's
It
worth
was
it.
a really
Sean has his
good
hand
show.
up.
I saw on about history on PBS was Rick Steves' Fascism in Europe. He talks about
Yeah.
all the history of fascism in Europe. It's an hour program. I suggest everybody watch it. It's very informative.
I saw it.
Sean, did you have something that you wanted to say, or your hand got stuck up? Okay, it went away.
No, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much it fits into this conversation, but I hear a lot of very high level themes going on. But what I want to do is put in a plug in for local governance. All politics is local, and I think here in the Bay Area, as part of one of the most progressive states in the union, we are the incubators for these ideas. And you can talk about, trying to tackle these at the federal level. Well, I think we all can see that we're not going to get out of this gridlock anytime soon. Even if, Biden is elected, it's probably going to be a while before we can start to affect any kind of change. And I think probably most of us would agree here that even Biden is not as progressive as many of us in this club, being that we come from a very progressive area of a progressive state. So, I think the work begins, when he's elected. But I just want to say that what I'd like to see, where my focus is here in the Tri-Valley. I think that there's a lot of good work to be done when it comes to affecting change to halt and reverse climate change, when it comes to creating opportunity and reintegration along race lines to create opportunity for people. We have an entire generation of people who are extremely housing burdened right now, and I count myself amongst that, paying 30% or more of their income on housing. That is going to be something that's going to drastically impact this economy here in California, and it's going to impact opportunity for folks for a long time if we do not fix it. Housing is an issue area that's very important to me, and what I would say is that in the East Bay, we still have remnants of redlining and exclusionary zoning happening, and we still have extreme NIMBYism happening here. And, I think what we need to do is come together as a region and really stop talking about, obstructionism, us versus Sacramento, talking about local control. And we really need to start talking about local solutions. How are we going to come to the table with ideas about how our communities are going to contribute to resolving the housing crisis, to creating opportunity for folks of lower socioeconomic levels, of different races who've traditionally been redlined out into ghettos? How do we do that? How are we part of that solution? And I don't think it needs to be at the expense of the environment. I don't. It needs to be both. It needs to be the environment. It needs to be progressive housing policy, progressive taxation policy. And it needs to be pro-union. It needs to be all those things. And we need to create opportunity right here in the Tri-Valley. So that's my mission over the next 4 years. And I think that what I'd like to see is in 2 years, I'd like to see us get like-minded folks elected to local office. So I've already started reaching out to other electeds and leaders in this area. And I want to start actively identifying, recruiting, and training the next generation of local electeds who are going to be with me on this journey.
I'm with you on that, Sean. I wasn't planning on backing off from politics, just assuming a new role. And as far as mentoring candidates and building our bench, I'm signing up for that one. Thank you very much. Van, you got something to say, or you just thumbs up?
Oh, it's thumbs up.
Okay.
Anybody else have something to say?
Mary's waving her hand. I don't know if that means she wants to
Go on, Mary.
talk.
Well, go for it, Mary.
Well, I'm kind of in the same boat as Sean, but I'm coming at it from a particular perspective. After the June demonstrations, we had, I think, at least 7 in Livermore alone. Groups began to form, Black Lives Matters groups, and they were, in fact, including people of various races, white, brown, and Black, and predominantly young. Right now, I am the oldest member of Tri-Valley for Black Lives here in Livermore. And I got on board because I'm pretty experienced in groups. So I don't know if I'll stay there forever, but I wanted to be there in case somebody needed something. And these young people are just taking off and doing great, joining committees in our town. We have an equity and inclusion committee that was formed after the demonstrations, and they were expecting 18 members, 18 applicants, I should say. Now they have 50 and counting. And so they decided to keep them all. And from the Tri-Valley for Black Lives, several got into the equity and inclusion. They're in the process of interviewing, where it's being set up right now, interviewing our new police chief. There has been some mentoring going on for these young people, but they're taking the ball and running with it. They're doing great. So they're coming up from below, and they're the new leadership. They're the people who don't have the homes, who worry about housing, might have to live with their parents, but they're going to take over, and it's very exciting to watch. And they'll be coming up, and maybe at some point they will take leadership. But right now it's local leadership, and it's wonderful.
Thank you, Mary. Is there anybody else?
Or anybody want to comment on things?
Okay, it doesn't look like.
This is Kelly. Can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Sure, or not so quick.
Okay, I apologize. I've been on mute a lot because of background noise, but I just wanted to thank you guys. I just want to thank you once again for the endorsement, and I really feel very close to this group, very special for a lot of connections, but I just appreciate the cause, the effort, what you guys are doing, and it goes a lot unsaid, and I feel very close to this group. It's been my first really true interaction for me to really feel like a true Democrat and through my beliefs, putting aside my own candidacy. And I just wanted to thank you all for the welcoming arms and making people feel welcome and comfortable to become a part of your group. And I just wanted to thank you all for your great efforts. And I do hope we have a very positive outcome for this next election at the national level because we desperately need it. And I just wanted to thank you all. So I just wanted to take a moment and express my feelings. And I'm very excited to be a new member of this group. And thank you. So anyway, I just wanted to appreciate and express my gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. You make us proud.
Thank you. I am very positive for my candidacy. I got endorsed. I don't know if you heard, but I was endorsed with the Pleasanton Weekly and the Independent in Livermore. It is a newcomer to the West Coast with shy of 3 years. Based upon my experience and my credentials in education, I hope to be elected as a Pleasanton trustee school board member. And if not, I will keep trooping through. But I am true to my candidacy policies and my merit. And I'm very positive with a positive outcome. But either way, I am proud to be a Democrat and be proud of being a member of this group. And thank you once again for the endorsement. Ellis, I can't thank you enough for all of our conversations. It's been such a delight. But you all are great constituents and members. And what I really appreciate is you guys speak from the heart. You're dedicated and true to what we believe in. So anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That kind of brings us to what our next meeting is going to be. And on even numbered years in November, we've always had a victory party. And I think we ought to have a victory party. It's going to bring your own cake party. We usually buy a cake at Costco, but that isn't going to work this time. But the idea is that I will invite back all of our endorsed candidates, and they can each say something about the campaign. We'll have kind of a go around and talk about the campaign and the results and all of that. Jackie has purchased for the club a version of Zoom, and she'll be running the next Zoom meeting. Bob was running this one because just the logistics didn't work out. But the idea is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, that we'll break out into smaller rooms and the participants will actually be able to wander from room to room and talk to a small number of people at the same time, rather than the larger group. And that may make for, let me call them, more intimate conversations. But everybody gets to talk, and you get to see the people.
We could do both.
Yeah, and we'll have a larger meeting and a smaller meeting, but that's what we can look for going into November. And you know, our November meeting is well after the election, so we'll have our results maybe.
Ellis, just to be
I'll
clear,
certainly be there. Thank you.
you know, on the bring your own cake, is that CAKE or KEG?
Either way.
Oh.
Either way, whatever you like.
Whatever you want.
You know, my work, we used to never count our chickens before they were hatched. We would never say anything good about a project or a conversion until it was done for 2 days. Are we sure we want to call it a victory?
Well,
Some people are
Just
gonna win.
something about
we
me is like,
endorsed how
yes,
many?
I don't
A
wanna
million
jinx it.
candidates, so one of them's gonna win. I
Some
think.
people are gonna
We
win.
Somebody's
endorsed
gonna win.
27 candidates, and I'll take as many bets as you would like to place. I'll take Rebecca and Eric Swalwell. I will take all bets on that one.
Easy bet.
We're very sure that they're going to win, and at the very least, Marisol is going to win because she's not running against anybody. So,
Okay, if you put it that way, I'll.
Yeah.
okay.
Whoever
So
wins.
we always at a 27. We have to have at least a couple of 3 winners, but we're going to have a lot more than that, and this is going to be good in that there's plenty of challenges for our elected officials. And because of their relationship with the club, I hope that all of our members feel comfortable going to our elected officials and talking to them about the issues that are important to you. So with that, does anybody else have any things to say, announcements, anything like that? Sean?
Ron and Sean.
Sean?
Oh, just a quick announcement. Tomorrow night, we will be phone banking for Rebecca Bauer-Cahan for Assembly and Melissa Hernandez for Mayor, 2 of our endorsed candidates. It's a 2-for-1 night. We will be phone banking into Dublin constituents. It's a very friendly, all Democratic women list. So you get to talk to a lot of friendly people. We just want to get the word out to folks about these 2 democratically endorsed women candidates.
Apple Valley Club.
I'm going to drop the link to sign up into the chat here. Please join
Could
us.
you email it to me and I'll email it to the whole club.
Okay.
I'll get it out tonight.
Will do, but I'll also drop a link in here. It's very easy to sign up as well. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Sean.
Is there any other business?
Yes.
Ron has his hand up.
Okay.
Hi. I'm wondering if any club members are interested in gathering for an election night watch party, say, for example, at an outside restaurant. Last election, we gathered at Maria, which is a restaurant in the Danville, San Ramon area, which has a large outside area. And we had an election watch party there. You know,
That didn't work out and they went out of business.
so the idea of having getting together physically for election watch night together, is that interesting for anybody? Does anybody want to do that besides me?
Maybe.
My wife says yes. I'm not that enthused about it.
Okay.
Okay, nobody else?
If you're over 60, your odds of catching something and having big issues is a big deal.
I'm a vulnerable population.
Yeah, that's
I'm
why
for-
I wouldn't do it.
No.
I think it's
Okay,
too risky for someone my age.
right. Okay,
We're
All
all
right.
elderly.
I just hope it goes the right way or I'm going to be bawling. So.
yeah. You don't want to do that in public.
Yeah.
Okay, not much
Well,
interest.
I already feel a lot better though.
Maria's also, and it doesn't evoke kind memories.
Yeah, the Trump night.
What was it, Mark?
Oh, I'm just want to say I'm thrilled tonight to see Ellis in the White House. That's over room.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Makes me feel better already.
He really gets ticked off when I leave the seat up.
Ellis. So gross.
He deserves it.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no other announcements, somebody got to speak. Meeting adjourned, and thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good
Bye,
meeting.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Lots of good discussion. Nice
Yeah, very good.
participation in the
Well, it's all-
discussion.
I think
Get
we're
I
everybody
like
good.
it.
out.
Wonderful ideas.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Bye.